Before this story begins, take just 1 second. If you believe stories can change lives, if you believe kindness still matters in this world, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a like, it helps this story reach more hearts. And in the comments tell us, where are you watching from? Your support keeps these stories alive. Now take a deep breath. And let's begin. Money doesn't buy everything. But that day, Thomas Whitmore discovered there was something his $1 billion couldn't do: erase guilt. The traffic light had been red for only 12 seconds when he saw the child. He shouldn't have looked. Thomas never looked. In the last 15 years building his pharmaceutical empire, he had learned rule number 1 of success: don't get distracted by the scenery. People on the streets were just that, scenery. Obstacles between him and the next 8-figure deal. But that child. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 years old. He stood on the sidewalk, holding a crumpled piece of cardboard. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't reaching out his hand. He was simply holding that sign, staring straight at Thomas's black Mercedes-Benz. 3 words written in blue marker. Do you remember? Thomas's heart skipped a beat. He blinked. Looked again. The sign was still there. The 3 words pierced the bulletproof glass as if they were bullets. Impossible. No one knew. No one could know. The light turned green. Horns blared behind him. But Thomas couldn't take his foot off the brake. His hands trembled on the Italian leather steering wheel. The boy flipped the sign over. On the back, another sentence, this time in red, as if written with urgency. I do. Thomas felt the air rush out of his lungs. Reality began to melt around him. Those brown eyes. That small nose. The way the child tilted his head, exactly like. No. It can't be. He hit the accelerator. The car shot forward, leaving the boy behind in a cloud of exhaust. But when he glanced at the rearview mirror, the child was still there, motionless, holding the sign. And then he did something that froze Thomas's blood. He smiled, 14 years earlier. To understand why a man who owned 3 private jets and an island in the Caribbean stopped his car 3 blocks later, you need to know Sarah. Sarah was 6 years old when Thomas met her. He was 23, freshly graduated in biochemistry, working 16 hours a day in a research lab. Sarah was the daughter of Margaret, the building's cleaning lady. Every night at 10 p.m., Margaret arrived with the little girl. She had no one to leave her with. Sarah did her homework in the corner of the break room while her mother cleaned the offices. Thomas never cared about children. But Sarah was different. She asked questions. Real questions. Why do you stay up so late? What are you trying to cure? Have you ever saved someone? One night, Sarah got sick. Very high fever. Margaret was desperate. No health insurance, no money, no options. Thomas did something he had never done before. He used his connections. He got Sarah admitted to a private hospital. He paid for everything. The girl had leukemia. The doctors gave her 6 months. Maybe less. Thomas promised Margaret he would find a cure. He worked like a possessed man. Tested 400 drug combinations. Slept 3 hours a night. Borrowed money he didn't have. Until he found something. An experimental formula. It wasn't approved. It hadn't completed trials. But it had a 73% chance of working. Margaret signed the consent form. They administered the treatment. Sarah died 17 hours later. Thomas never told anyone what happened next. Margaret disappeared. No lawsuit. No accusations. She simply vanished. And Thomas took the formula that killed Sarah, adjusted 3 variables, and created the drug that made him a billionaire. The same medication that now saved thousands of children with leukemia around the world. Built on the bones of a 6-year-old girl who trusted him. Now, pulled over on the shoulder of an avenue in Manhattan, Thomas couldn't stop shaking. He got out of the car. Started walking back. His legs moved on their own. I need to see that boy again. I need to know what he knows. I need to know who he is. He turned the corner. His heart pounding like a war drum. The boy was still there. But he wasn't alone anymore. Beside him stood a woman. Older. Gray hair. Deep-set eyes that had cried too much. Margaret. Thomas felt his legs give way. She was alive. After 14 years, she was there, looking at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was worse. It was forgiveness. "You must be wondering who he is," Margaret said, pointing to the boy. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. Thomas couldn't speak. "This is Lucas. He has leukemia. Stage 3. She paused, letting each word sink in. "The doctor said he has 6 months. Maybe less." "No. But there's hope," Margaret continued. "A new drug. Experimental. They say it saves 96% of patients." She looked straight into Thomas's eyes. "You created that drug. It costs $300,000 per treatment." Hot tears streamed down Thomas's face. "I don't have $300,000, Thomas." Her voice broke for the first time. "I don't even have 3,000. Lucas was still holding the sign. Now Thomas could see the full message on the back. "I do remember. I remember, Sarah. I remember that you tried. I remember that you cared. Sarah told me about you," Margaret said softly. "In her last days, she only talked about Thomas, who's going to cure me. She believed until the very last second." Thomas dropped to his knees right there on the dirty New York sidewalk. "I killed your daughter," he whispered. "No." Margaret knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You tried to save her. You used everything you had. You risked everything." She wiped her own tears away. "And then you used her pain to save thousands of other children. But you..." Thomas looked at her. "Why did you disappear?" "Because I couldn't bear to watch you destroy yourself over something that wasn't your fault." Margaret gave a sad smile. "But now I need you. Lucas needs you." Thomas looked at the boy. Those brown eyes, so much like Sarah's. He knew what Margaret was asking. It wasn't just the money. It was a second chance to do the right thing. Thomas stood up. Wiped his tears. Looked at Lucas. "How old are you, champ?" 7, Lucas answered. "The same age Sarah would have been when." "It doesn't matter." "Do you like ice cream?" Lucas nodded shyly. "Then here's the deal." Thomas knelt to be eye level with the boy. "I'm going to pay for your treatment. Every cent. And when you get better, when not if, you and I are going to have the biggest ice cream in the world together. Deal?" Lucas's eyes lit up. "Deal!" Thomas turned to Margaret. Pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'm going to do more than that." His voice was firm now, resolute. "I'm going to create a fund. For every child who can't afford the treatment. I'll start with 50 million. He looked at the sign in Lucas's hands. "And I'll call it the Sarah Fund." Margaret covered her mouth, sobbing. She would have loved that. She whispered. 6 months later. Thomas was at the hospital when Lucas was discharged. The boy was bald from chemotherapy, but his eyes shone. The doctor had just delivered the news, complete remission. "Ready for that ice cream?" Thomas asked. Lucas jumped off the bed. "Ready!" As they walked through the hospital corridors, Thomas saw the faces of other children. Some smiling. Others exhausted. All fighting. And for the first time in 14 years, he didn't feel the weight of guilt. He felt the weight of responsibility. Not to get richer. Not to build empires. But to honor every Sarah he lost. To save every Lucas who could still win. At the hospital exit, Margaret was waiting. "Thank you," she said simply. Thomas hugged the woman he believed had every reason in the world to hate him. "Thank you," he replied. "For reminding me who I was before I became what I am." Lucas tugged at Thomas's sleeve. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Are you going to stop making that sad face now?" Thomas smiled. A real smile, one he hadn't worn in years. "I'll try, champ. I'll try." 3 years later, the Echo. Thomas was in his office when he received an envelope. Inside, a crayon drawing. 2 stick figures holding a sign. One labeled Thomas, the other Lucas. At the top, in big, crooked letters. Thank you for remembering. On the back, a photo. Lucas, now 10 years old, healthy, smiling beside Margaret at a 5th grade graduation. And a small note. The Sarah Fund has already treated 847 children. You kept your promise. She would be proud. Margaret. Thomas placed the photo on the wall, next to his only photograph of Sarah. 2 children. One he lost. Another he saved. And between them, the truth that finally set him free. Success is not measured by what you build. It is measured by who you save along the way. The Sarah Fund continues operating to this day, having treated more than 12,000 children unable to afford oncology treatment. Thomas Whitmore stepped down as CEO of his pharmaceutical company in 2019 to dedicate himself fully to the fund. Lucas, now 18, studies medicine. He says he wants to save other children the way Uncle Thomas saved me. Margaret still works as a volunteer at the hospital where Sarah was treated. At the entrance, a bronze plaque reads, "In memory of Sarah Chin, the girl who changed everything." If this story taught us anything, it's this. Success is not about how much you earn. It's about how many lives you touch along the way. Sometimes one act of courage, one moment of compassion, one choice to do the right thing, can change a life forever, including your own. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts around the world. Until the next story. Never underestimate the power of remembering, caring, and choosing to do good.